No, I mean, like I said, that nothing's all good and nothing's all bad. But um, with homeschooling, you really get to leverage the personal relationship you have with your children and the love that you have for your children, or at least the love that you should have for your children,
Right.
um, into, educational opportunity. Um, Oftentimes it is, I mean, some fathers do homeschool, but I think overwhelmingly the majority of homeschooling that takes place by mothers is being administered by mothers. And that makes sense because the mothers are the initial educators. Um, I quote Amos Wilson whenever possible. If you know, even I remember reading this book, The
Oh,
Developmental
okay.
Psychology of the Black Child, where he, as a psychologist, talks about the fact that the educational process of a child actually begins in utero.
Mm.
So that's why it's so important to be mindful and be aware of like what type of environments as a pregnant mother where you have your child at, who you're around, what type of conversations you're having, what type of conversations the people around you are having, because the child is like, internalizing all that. So then when the child is born, then you're continuing to teach your child about life, about humanity, about the world, and it will make sense that you are able to homeschool if possible. We know that with economic conditions being what they are, everyone doesn't have that ability because we have to provide food, clothing, and shelter for everybody.
Right.
So unfortunately, a lot of people have to go into the workforce. Well, I shouldn't say unfortunately. It just depends on the circumstances. It could be fortunate, it could be unfortunate. But a lot of people have to go into the workforce in order to be able to provide economically for the household and contribute to that. But I think if possible, I think more people should at least consider homeschooling. I will say that I think one reason a lot of people do not consider homeschooling is because of a lot of negative propaganda. Just like there's negative propaganda around a lot of things that people don't do or don't want to attempt to do or don't want to embrace, such as mathematics. Like there's a lot of negative propaganda around math about how math is irrelevant, math is too difficult, math is hard. You have to be born with a math gene or else you won't be able to do it. The same similar to homeschooling. Like people think that if you homeschool your kids, they're gonna be weirdos, they're not gonna be properly socialized.
Mm.
And again, like we should really think, I think we should have some serious conversations about what that means. So when you say a child is not going to be properly socialized if they're homeschooled, as opposed to being properly socialized from being in a public school or a charter
Mhm.
school or a private school,
Mhm.
then we should really be forced to define what proper socialization looks like.
Right.
Because
Right.
I would argue that a lot of the shiftless, unhealthy, inappropriate behaviors that children exhibit and adults exhibit were learned when they were in charter, public, and private schools.
That's
So
true.
if we want to talk about socialization processes, then we should be more critical, more analytical about
Mhm.
what that means. How do you define proper socialization?